just what are the ramifications of whatever is going on with Michigan and the sign stealing scandal alongside Burgergate, which I think is less of a priority but is a complicating factor. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching the #1 college football show, welcome. Thank you for joining us. If you like the show, hit that subscribe button. Join the more than 131,000 folks that subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Do you think anything serious is going to happen to the University of Michigan's football program following sign stealing, Burgergate, and what I think is going to be a pretty damn good year for them on the football field 2025 if they can get past this thing? I want to talk about this because this is a really fascinating topic for me, because I think it is going to be not just the biggest case before the Committee on Infractions in some time. It's because I think we're going away from something like this taking up this large space in the sport, because we've come to realize, or I should say, they have come to realize, we have known the NCAA is an outdated model for governing college athletics, let alone college football, which is its own thing altogether. But as the NCAA still has bylaws and the NCAA members are subject to those bylaws, you need to be able to enforce them. The problem with enforcing them is that you don't really have any subpoena power, so you have to take what you're going to be able to get. And that's kind of how this Michigan sign stealing scandal has taken on a life of its own. Like, for those that don't know, right, we're just going to start with what you do know. We know that, yeah, Michigan was caught stealing signs, and the way in which they procured those signs is at issue. Sign stealing in and of itself, that's not against the rules, right? That's part of the game. As a matter of fact, Clemson used to be really damn good at it, and Brent Venables could look across that sideline. They have people looking across that sideline, and they could pick up your signals and they could break them, and then they knew what you were running. Where we draw the line is using electronic devices like video to help you aid in that process. And what Michigan is accused of is taking advantage of Connor Stalions' ability to get into, we think, stadiums with mules of sorts to video the other team's signs and then to break them down on his own time, not in real time in the game, show up to the game with the book on what the signs meant and know immediately what the other team was running. That is where we are getting into trouble with this. And frankly, college football should have been way ahead of this to begin with. We've been using helmet-to-headset technology for more than a decade in the NFL. And in high school football, they had been using it well before it became mandated, something you could use last year in college football. That would mean that you don't need signs. You can just talk into the green dot at the quarterback or your captain on the defense and tell them what the play should be, and not have to worry about whether or not somebody's stealing your signs. All you have to do is worry about whether somebody's stealing your radio frequency, which is a thing. Now, the other thing that I think is real complicating about this is how the NCAA was tipped off on the sign stealing and what they are choosing to do about it. The story out of Yahoo Sports in January really pointed towards someone inside the building at Michigan may have come up with some information that aided the NCAA in its process. Why that is interesting is because for some time, many had thought that it was a rogue Ohio State fan, or even Ryan Day himself, who had hired a private investigator and a firm to try to figure out what Michigan was stealing in from where. Going back to the Texas Christian game against Michigan, the one in which Texas Christian beat Michigan, TCU knew that Michigan had their signs, and they acted that way. It might have helped lead to them winning the football game, quite honestly. And there were even some programs inside the Big Ten that were tipping off other programs going, hey, look, they probably got yours. They got ours, and we're not quite sure how they did it, and we have our suspicions about whether or not they did this fairly. Again, stealing signs is not the crime here. It is how you procured those signs that we're talking about. So you have all that going on. And you also have someone inside the building that may have aided the NCAA's enforcement arm in gathering some information that it would use to send its notice of allegations to Michigan. Michigan is quite honestly feeling like it's being unfairly attacked. Now, How they got this stuff is not really the point, but there is, I think, a really important note here, and I'm going to give credit to The Athletic on this for really scoping this out. The NCAA won't actually go through with notice of allegations from an anonymous source as its backbone. If it helped, that's great, but it needs to have other things to go with. And they don't really have to talk about those things until such time as it becomes public record, and getting the public record on what's in the notice and then what is, more importantly, in Michigan's response to the notice has been really difficult. And that's disappointing because University of Michigan is a public university subject to FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request, open records. In some states is what we call those. You file those, and over a course of days, they go through what you are asking for, and they ask you to be specific, and you can go back and forth on this for some time if they want to not tell you something. And I don't know that Michigan is in a hurry to tell anybody about what their response is, but the parts that we saw of this are that Michigan feels this is a witch hunt, right? You also have in this Sherrone Moore, who admitted to deleting text messages he got from Connor Stalions. First, people thought that was because he was looking to cover up the evidence. What it actually was, according to Sherrone Moore, and I believe him on this because football coaches and me being who I am, he didn't want Connor Stalions to get credit for what Michigan's football team did in 2023, which is win a national championship. And Connor Stalions wasn't on the team, especially when they got into the deep water, when they needed to beat Ohio State, when they needed to run through what was left of the college football playoff, beat Alabama, and of course, Washington in the national championship game. I get that part. As much as I don't think that it is important for what reason Sherrone Moore deleted the text messages, he did. And then they recovered them, right? But there's a complicating factor in this, and that is Burgergate, which goes back to Jim Harbaugh being a head coach and whether or not he lied to NCAA investigators about buying some hamburgers. As recruiting violations go, that one doesn't rate for me. And I don't think it rates for most college football fans. Like, we don't care anymore. I remember satellite camps used to be the biggest offense for programs like University of Michigan. Now we don't care. We don't even cap official visits anymore. It used to be 5. We are in an arms race where we're trying to pay players as much as we can to keep them on campus year after year. We are professionalized the sport in a way in which these recruiting violations seem quite quaint. But I find it interesting, and the reason I wanted to do this segment is the last time we had something of this significance reach our shores, if you will, it was Tennessee when Jeremy Pruitt was head coach, and they got 18 level 1 infractions for recruiting violations, among them allegedly putting money into McDonald's Happy Meals bags and handing them to players. Of course, Pruitt got hit with the show cause, and University of Tennessee took it on the chin there for a second, but that led them to Josh Heupel and what has been their best era of sustained excellence since Phil Fulmer was head coach. That's not too shabby, man. You know, they made the playoff this year. They got beat down, but they made the playoff this year. Ole Miss didn't make the playoff this year. Florida didn't make the playoff this year. And by the way, neither Ole Miss nor Florida have made the playoff. Auburn hasn't made the playoff, right? We're thinking about this, I think, in terms of what effect it's going to have on the university. And I'm not sure that this is going to have that much of an effect, especially knowing that Michigan was able to do a lot more last year than I thought they could with a lot less. Now, did I expect them to have a starting quarterback that was worth the damn at the start of the year? Yeah, I did. And I expected them to be a better football team than they showed in the first half of the season. But they played a close game against Indiana, and then they were able to beat Northwestern, beat Ohio State, and beat Alabama in succession. And Sherrone Moore has gone about trying to fill that quarterback void with Mikey Keene, and then the number 1 player in the 24/7 composite in 2025 in Bryce Underwood. And then he hires Chip Lindsey, who helped Drake May become a first-round pick at North Carolina from Mack Brown. Then he added Justice Haynes from Michigan. Like, Michigan's in a really good spot. And as much as Michigan fans like to be in here and think that trolling somehow is getting on my nerves, it's not. Troll away. I think that it is important to note that they should feel good about their chances of being really competitive for a college football playoff spot and to win a Big Ten championship this year. I don't know about a national championship because the levels to this get real thick as you get into that Final Four grouping. Sass Penn State about being right up against that wall, trying to push through, or Georgia trying to get past Notre Dame with their backup quarterback in Gunnar Stockton. But if they end up going, hey, Michigan is a repeat offender, we're going to hammer them. What does the hammer actually look like? We don't know, right? Like, there's no real way of knowing. And honestly, I thought it was more important that Michigan had done a really good job of lawyering this thing, which is what I would do, which is bury you in paperwork. I know that the Committee on Infractions is made of volunteers. Do you want the smoke? And you know what? Some retirees, some volunteers, they absolutely want the smoke. They got time for this. They've made time for this. This is who they are. This is what they're going to be about. This is the person at the homeowners association meeting who just keeps us there and keeps us there and keeps us there and keeps us there, or who's measuring how far away your trash can is from your sidewalk. By the way, you got a homeowners association that probably ain't in the South, and if it is in the South, you better have a gated community, because some of us, we don't get down with the Gestapo showing up to the door telling us how to home own. That ain't what we gonna do here. That is what I think is going on here. And you know what? Got a really great law school over there, so I would expect him to be really good at lawyering and stuff. But I think more important to me is what comes next. After all this is said and done, do we care? And you know what? I think the answer is, honestly, no. No. The same people that want to beat the brakes off of Michigan before the sign stealing scandal are the same people that want to beat the brakes off of Michigan after the sign stealing scandal. That's not going to change. The program is going to go on, and nobody is getting the death penalty ever again, because the money in college football is just too high to be trying to limit what other people get to do. And when you're talking about Michigan, you're talking about one of the blue bloods of the sport, one of the founding members of the Big Ten. It's Ohio State, it's them, it's the University of Chicago, which ain't even in Illinois, which ain't even in the Big Ten no more. Point there is it much ado about nothing? No, because there need to be consequences for breaking rules. But are those consequences going to be the kind of things that cripple the program? Absolutely friggin' not, right? It's not. Could something happen to Sherrone Moore? Maybe, but I doubt it. I don't think you're going to get that man a show cause. I think they might give Jim Harbaugh a show cause, and it be something like for show, because that man is coaching in the NFL, and I simply do not see him returning to college football ever again. He has done what he wanted to do in this sport. He won the national championship at his alma mater. Short of that, he wants to win a Super Bowl. He wins a Super Bowl and a national championship. He joins the likes of some really, really outstanding coaches, including Pete Carroll, Jimmy Johnson, Barry Switzer, the guys that you know who can do it at both of those levels. And he cannot do that by going back to college. So, NCAA, do your worst. But I think your worst is a Nerf gun.